It's 12 o'clock in Frisco, Texas, and it's time for Smoker Broker Radio with Robert Mesh, a.k.a. the Smoker Broker. Robert is the owner of Small World Realty and has employed hundreds of real estate agents in his 17-year career. He has instructed and mentored over 10,000 real estate agents at the highly acclaimed Champions School of Real Estate and is considered an expert in Texas residential realty. Robert is also an advocate of true entrepreneurial spirit and has helped many to transition from corporate America into the world of self-employment. And now live from the studio to your world, the Smoker Broker.
Hey, welcome to Smoker Broker. I'm Robert Mesh, and I'm the guy they call Smoker Broker. That intro is exactly right. I have helped lots of people move from corporate into the real estate world. And I'll tell you, I do it because I'm empathetic, because I cannot stand the corporate world. And that's how I got here many years ago. You want to talk about your ultimate freedoms as to Rick, can you hear me, or am I just off?
Now I can.
Now we can.
I thought the show after the ratings went up for a little bit.
I was like, why are we back out here? That's how I got here many years ago. You know, if you really want freedom in your life, real estate is now a standing way to do it. We don't just say it because we want you to join real estate. We want you to be on our team, which a lot of those opportunities are at joinswr.com. We are really serious about the fact that it's a great way to move on to another career where you control everything and not somebody else. So we're really big, and I love the intro. We've had the intro for 3 years now, and even though it probably needs to be amended here and there with numbers, the general purpose of it is still true. We do help people transition from corporate to real estate. And one of the things we do that's very unique compared to a lot of other brokerages is that we will actually help you. We'll let you keep working and keep doing your job and showing you how to do this. We actually believe and know that you can continue to work even a full-time job and do real estate on the side. And that is something we push heavy in our SWR group. Happy Thursday. Hope everything's going well and that you're doing well. We're almost into the mid part of October here. So pushing into the fall season. And like we talked about last week, the market continues to stabilize itself. We're continuing to see strong sales, and this will continue on into the beginning of next year. And we're hoping that we have a much more normal and a very healthy market. One of the things that's awesome about shifts and stabilizations is that a lot of times if you have a market that was very one-sided, like we've had for the last few years, that has been tilted towards the seller, it usually has a long relief period where you have a very normal and healthy market for quite some time. And we are definitely heading in that direction. And the hope is that 2022, we have a much healthier market that is very enjoyable for all people who are in real estate. We're fortunate than a lot of other states when it comes to real estate in Texas, because all the metropolitan areas that we're involved in, we are looking at phenomenal growth for the next 10 to 15, 20 years. Real estate is a very good business to be in the state of Texas. So lucky for y'all, those of you in the great state of Texas, great place for you to be practicing real estate. Well, we continue to do, and we always have opening comments before we get into our subject matter. We're continuing to deal with the pandemic. We're continuing to deal with how COVID evolves and how we deal with it. You know, we've said it on many shows, especially last year, and it continues to be a problem, maybe even more so a problem now, that it's really a cultural war, because there is truly a defined line on, is it right that we mandate someone to vaccinate? Is it right that we make them put on a mask? And that conversation is neither here nor there for this particular show. We know it's controversial, and we're not going to get involved in what somebody thinks. But the fact is, it's a divided nation on, is it right? Is it not right? One of the things that you're seeing right now that's been significant, and it's been in the news quite a bit, and the federal government, is the employers making their associates that they have to be vaccinated to work. And again, whatever your opinion is, it's not for this particular show, but there are some people that will tell you that whether you believe in vaccination or not, let's say you're hardcore that everybody should be vaccinated. There are some people out there that will tell you that their doctors have said this person can't be vaccinated because it actually hurts a treatment that they're doing, maybe in cancer or some other type of illness that they have. So it's hard if you're misinformed, where you're just, because your beliefs, you say one thing but you don't know the full picture of it. That causes division, and the problem here is that it could cause the type of division that you don't have a choice. If the employer says you have to do it, you either do it or you don't have a job. And that's something that's been really scrutinized here over the last few months. Is it okay or not? We continue to do the battles with, and I will comment on this because it's not siding one way or another. It's annoying that it's inconsistent when I walk into somewhere, whether I have a mask on or not. I don't care what you believe, whether you should have the mask on or not, or whether you shouldn't. It's annoying that it's inconsistent, because I literally walk into somewhere and they're like, you have to have a mask on. I'm like, so I go back and get it. Whereas I walk into your other 4 places, I'm like, no. I'm like, well, which one is it? Do I have to have it or do I have to not have to have it? And this is what happens when you let private organizations do whatever the hell they want. But it's hypocritical that you have a government that says you have to do this, you have to do that. So there's really no right answer. It truly is a catch-22. You're like, well, whatever I do, I'm damned if I do, I'm damned if I don't. Now, as far as it relates to real estate, it's frustrating. Because y'all, now, I will tell you, I don't have the mask. I am vaccinated, and I have had it. And it's hard for me when I do go and show a property. Before Brent says anything, I do show properties, a lot more so than lately. It's hard when I see a client, when I get out and they have it on, I'm like, oh. So I put it on. And
that's nice of you. I don't.
Or I go, or you go to the store and you see so many people have it on, and that makes you feel like a dipshit because you don't have it on. And it doesn't mean whether it's right or wrong.
I always feel like a dipshit, so.
Yeah, Mike just accepts it. So it's tough, and we're dealing with these things, and it does affect us in real estate. And there is no right answer, and our lives will continue to be consumed by it for quite some time. I don't see the COVID controversy being settled for years now. I really don't. I think in another year we will be having the same conversations as to, should we have a mask, should we not? Should a place allow it? Which places allow it? Travel, is it federally mandated to do it? Whatever. And we'll make another comment too. And some people will say I'm siding on that you shouldn't have masks the way I'm saying this. It's not true. I'm just going to make an observation just to places that I've recently been. Everybody agrees that the restaurant mandate of having the mask on when you walk to the table is dumb. Because what good does, if someone has it and they take the mask off at the table, it's still going to spread to anybody else who's in there. So the fact that a restaurant says you have to have the mask on until you sit, I'm like, okay. Now, if the conversation there is, well, every bit counts and help that you can prevent, I'm like, I guess. But the bottom line is that person sneezes, anybody within 20, 30 feet is going to have what they have. Go ahead. Gillis?
What?
He just coughed.
What's that?
He just coughed.
Oh, he coughed. Great. Yeah. Cough with his mask.
Now you all have it.
Little smoky.
Yeah, you'd be surprised to see some conspiracy theorists. Well, it's possible you can get it through the internet. The other one, the federal mandate on the.
I'm gonna have to spread that one.
Yeah, right.
It's wireless COVID.
Jim, did you hear Jim? I have to spread that one. He's a conspiracy theorist. Jim's out on our Republican website right now. Well, you got to be careful about this. It's at the federal the transportation mandate. Where they go through and they have you have to have the mask on the plane. Yet you can take it off to have a drink or to eat. I'm like, we're in a plane. There's ventilation systems. The ventilation circulates. Whatever the air goes through, it goes back in and it comes back. Anybody who has that damn thing is most likely going to catch it. Now, I know there's some people go, oh, that's not true. there are some people that could be saved. I'm like, whatever, fine.
I will say this though, is that people's pants don't stop the smells leaking out from them on the plane. So I don't think those masks are doing anything on that
Jesus
plane.
Christ, you went there today.
Yep.
Or people's feet. I saw someone complaining that they didn't have shoes on. I was like, God bless, man. Come on.
That should be a federal offense to take your shoes
It
off.
should be it should be mandatory stoning.
Yes.
Mandatory stoning for someone. Hey, look, you got to have balls or whatever to sit there and take your shoes off on a flight. You know, I try not to be controversial in public, but it took everything I had to go, come on, man. I mean, you got to be kidding. I mean, you got to be. It's just so the disrespect level of someone taking their shoes off on a flight is like at an ultimate high. You know, so not to mention with the diseases that we have and everything that's out there. You know, we're sitting here worried about masks. We have a federal mandate. Actually, this is a good one. We have a federal mandate that says you have to have your mask on, but we don't have a federal mandate that says you have to keep your clothes and your shoes on. So, you know, you're just like, okay.
But you're also sitting in one of the filthiest seats you could possibly sit in.
That's right. Gross. I mean, that's exactly right. God knows the person that's out there before. I love the cleaning crews between the flights. They do a great job. You
They're there about 6 minutes.
It's funny how Robert's a man of the people, but we all know he flies private everywhere.
The man of the people. I love
Smoker broker jet.
Yeah, I love the man of the people. You know, no, it's really not that. I'm huge on common sense, and it's just hard for me. It's very hard to battle a life where a majority of the people just do not have common sense. And when the masses don't have common sense, which they don't, it makes it hard for the people that do. And
but they buy houses, so let's go.
Well, I know. I mean, it is true. For the houses in there, it is true in there. All right, so anyways, those are all helping us. Brent's right. Time to move on. I want to make sure we introduce our sponsor. I meant to do it last week, and I didn't. Brent, would you mind doing our current sponsor right now?
Sure, yeah. It happens to be
Little Smoky.
Yeah, Little Smoky. That's actually, he doesn't have a vaccine mandate, but he has a name mandate, so I have to refer to myself as Little Smoky. It's really weird. So our sponsor today is Mr. Greg Holdberg with Liberator Health Insurance, the best value and affordable health care. They have a new offer. In addition to great medical insurance plans, Liberator now offers the best standalone dental plan available. No waiting period, $0 deductibles, $25 per visit copay, $5,000 per year coverage, no claim forms in network, 2 PPO networks, affordable rates. Call now for a quick quote. As an independent agency, Liberator is committed to transforming healthcare in Texas through innovative healthcare plans that are affordable and rich in benefits. For more information and to get a quick quote, call or text Greg Holdberg, independent health insurance broker, at 214-886-4688 or visit them at liberatorhealthinsurance.com.
Awesome.
Boom.
Thank you. Always appreciate our sponsors, especially when it comes to health insurance. Health insurance is so expensive. Very hard to find a good health insurance carrier out
Speaking
there.
of hard to find, it's a young Gary Ritchie here with us today.
He is a young Gary. He looks young today. Look at him. Gary, good to see you, my friend.
Unstable internet connection. My apologies.
That's what happens when you live out in the sticks, right?
Yeah, the sticks of New Braunfels. Yeah,
That's
thank
right.
you.
That's right.
Well, this is an unstable crew, so you'll fit right in.
Gary, you're gonna have to watch the show, last week's show, because you're abused quite a bit in it.
Oh, thank you.
Gary,
Yeah, I was otherwise occupied. I was
Those-
abused.
Those are badges of courage for Gary. And that's what happens when you know so much and you're intelligent, because everyone's always they can't stand how smart he is. You know, so you have to bring him down to some extent, because in the end, he is the most intelligent person on this particular podcast right now. With Dallas being the weakest of the intelligent.
Hey, I'm last.
Watch
but
it.
you know what,
my
though?
cat is listening.
I placed. So,
all right, guys, we're going to talk about one of the most unpleasant conversations. We're sitting here laughing. We go through our current events and try to have some uplifting stuff every once in a while, but there's nothing uplifting about this conversation. In fact, it's the most difficult and controversial of all the conversations we have, is when a contract can be breached. And as true to our shows that we always do, this is not the one that's taught in class. This is not the one that your broker sits beside and says, let's talk about breach contract. Because in all honesty, what broker wants to start off with, we're going to have these, so let's go ahead and talk about them. That's not really where we want to head with our agents, preparing them for this is going to suck. So we like to have positive thoughts, and we like to hope that they never go through this. But the reality is every agent is going to have some touch of these conversations, some worse than others. Of course, me and my, famous picture in the Murphy's Law in the dictionary, because my picture always would be there like this, for Murphy's Law. So I've had a lot of issues on the road when it comes to breach contract. And quite honestly, that is why I learned to specialize in it, because I had so much of it happen to me that I never wanted it to happen again. And I did become an expert in dealing with breach contracts. So we are going to give you a lot of information in the next 45 minutes or so on things that you probably had no idea about. So this probably, I would say, is one of our top 10 shows when it comes to information. Okay. So there are tons of ways we can go through it. There are tons of scenarios, which we're going to go through whatever we can at the time. But I'm going to start off with this conversation because it's the most important, and it's the one that so many real estate agents do not understand. Even veteran real estate agents, which is the scary part, because they're the ones that cause issues in not knowing these procedures. So anybody can default. Usually when we talk about default, we're talking about a buyer. Seller rarely wants to default. They have very few opportunities to default. So, unless they just flat out say, I'm not doing this, they're not the ones that we're going to be talking about. It's usually the buyer that's going to cause issues. And it's usually centered around the buyer backing out. And for whatever reason they gave. Now, what I'm about to talk about is the assumption that the buyer's backing out for really no reason at all, more like cold feet. Okay. We'll talk about job loss, divorce, finance, and death in a little bit. But right now we're going to talk about the simplistic, I just changed my mind, because this is the one that can really cause some problems if you don't know what you're doing. All right. So the first piece of this, and let's try, because I know I talk a lot in this one, as I do in all the shows. Mike, explain the option period to everybody. Tell them what the option period, why do we have it? What is it that we're doing in there?
It is the time period that the buyer has to get out of the actual contract for whatever reason he could possibly think of. The seller won't wear a mask, the whatever.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
I love the whatever. The technical term is unrestricted, but the whatever is a better explanation, because it pretty much is that they can back out for whatever reason they want. They can just flat out say, I do not like Brent's hair, and they can back out just like that. So it's whatever. It doesn't have to be anything professional on why they back out. And that's important to this conversation, because that's their right. Now, once that ends, which is usually 7 to 10 days, then they've lost that right to back out for whatever reason. And if they've lost that right to back out for whatever reason, now there are penalties that will be assessed. And we're going to talk about the level of penalties here at the beginning, and then we'll talk about some of the examples that happen. So we're kind of doing this the opposite way. We're talking about the end result, but I believe when I teach this, you should know about the end result first so you can understand how it applies to the live situations. So you have 3 levels. One is what we call our liquidated damages. For those of you who are studying for the exam, this is actually a part of the test process, is understanding this. Liquidated damages are usually centered around they're going to lose their earnest money. All right, when we talk about someone backing out of a deal after the option period, no matter how long after, whether it's a day after or 20 days after, you can count on it. The earnest money is going to be lost, because the belief is they already had 7 to 10 days to back out for whatever reason. If they waited that long and now, what stops them from backing out whenever? So they're going to lose their earnest money. This is agreed upon by almost every real estate agent in the country, that if they wait past their option and they back out for just a nonchalant whatever, they should lose their earnest money. This is what we call a liquidated damage. Standard house, maybe just under 1%. So if it's $300,000 or $400,000, we're talking about $3,000, $4,000. So it's significant, and it's meant to be significant. It's meant to be a deterrent for someone to back out after an option period. It should be a hand slap, and it should be one that hurts. Okay. The second one is what we call monetary damages. Now, this is the problem that we start having. We still have 2 and 3. We've only discussed 1. The reason why it's a problem is most real estate agents don't know 2 and 3, and I haven't even said 3 yet. They don't know it because they're trained in the beginning, and this is one of the greatest failures of real estate brokerages. They don't tell them what the consequences actually could be. They actually say, or they make them believe, that the only thing that's going to happen if you back out is you're going to lose your earnest money. It's a fact. The majority of the agents out there, if you took a poll of 100 agents, new and some of them that are even older, what's going to happen if you back out? They go, you're going to lose your earnest money. And if you said, and, they'd be like, what? Because they don't know the other ones. If you want to know why they don't know the other ones, it's a very simplistic answer. It never happened to them. It never happened to them. So they don't know. All they know is that someone said, we're going to lose your earnest money if you do that. Now, the reason why this is a problem is you have a whole industry of agents that have been taught that if they back out, the earnest money is the only thing they're going to lose. Well, you have some people that if it's communicated that they're only going to lose their earnest money, and the earnest money is $3,000 and they make like $600,000 or $700,000, they're going to be like, that's fine, whatever. I don't mind losing it. I'm going to back out for the hell of it no matter what. That's the first one. The next one, the one that a lot of people don't know about, is monetary damages. So monetary damages follow up with, not only are you going to lose your earnest money, now you have other things that could be a problem because you potentially cost the seller money because you were immature or you were irresponsible about fulfilling your obligations to the contract. For instance, let's say someone backs out like a week before close, which that's pretty bad. And again, the asterisk here is that we're assuming nonchalant. I'm doing it because I have cold feet. Back out a week before close, the seller might be like, hold on. We paid those Mayflower people to come out and pack this house up, and they ain't cheap. They charged us $7,000 to pack all that shit up, and now it's going to some warehouse that we're going to have to pay more money. So we're out $8,000 because of your stupidity. Guess who's paying for that? It ain't going to be me. This is what we call monetary damages. Now, I want you to follow the timeline. Most people believe if you back out right after the option, it should be a liquidated damage, a hand slap, and we're done. Monetary damages typically won't be taken into consideration if it's literally right after. Most courts agree that, hey, look, they made a mistake. It's going to cost them pretty good. That's enough. But after that, every day that's closer to the close is going to cause more issues and a higher hierarchy on how much is going to be punished throughout this process. You get to where you're within a week, you got problems. You get to where you're within 3 days or the day before, you got real issues. And you're going to find that out when we get to the third penalty out there. Monetary damage can also go as far as to, hey, I've already rented an apartment and I had to put the first and last month's rent. Someone's paying for this and it ain't going to be me. Now, the problem that we start getting into, monetary damages make sense. I think everybody would agree that if a contract's been breached and the seller is not the one who breached it, and they've incurred these expenses that they should be compensated. But where the problem comes in is that a lot of those agents were never trained that the monetary damages are a possibility. They were only trained that they lose their earnest money.
Mhm.
And if they were only trained that they lose their earnest money, and they communicated to their buyer when the buyer said they were going to back out, and the buyer said, well, what's the worst that can happen? And the agent responded, well, you lose your earnest money. And they didn't respond to all this other stuff. They just created a huge problem, because if you really think about it, and the wheels are spinning fast enough, they pretty much might have encouraged that buyer to back out because they didn't tell them everything that could happen. Do you not agree that if the buyer's told, well, what happens if I back out? Well, you're going to lose $2,000. Yeah, that's all right. What if the buyer was told you're going to lose $2,000 and you could potentially lose whatever money the seller has lost, and that could be excessively high, 15, 20, or 30,000. Do you think the buyer has the same response? Hell no. In fact, most buyers, and I can tell you by fact and by experience, most buyers, when they hear that, they're like, you know what? I'll go ahead and close and fix my problems after this. I'll sell it if I have to. A lot of the problems in the real estate industry are unfortunately caused by an uneducated real estate agent, because they didn't tell their client what probably would have saved this issue. And if you think those aren't bad enough, the third one is by far the harshest one. The third one is what we call pseudo-specific performance. This is where a judge might flat out say, you will do what you said you were going to do. You don't even have a choice. You've gone so far in this situation merits, you will close on that property. There are hundreds and thousands of real estate agents out there that don't even know that those consequences exist, which causes us a problem. And it's a big one. And that's why I wanted to start off with this, because now we're going to funnel through each of the guys here. We're going to start talking about how some of these consequences are reality and how they pan through. So, Gary, let's talk about this. You and I have done this for a long time. Brent, quiet. Let's talk about where we've seen someone make this. Use some battle stories here. Let's talk about, we're on the listing side of it, and we have a buyer backing out for nonchalant reasons. What are the conversations that we might have had or tried to prevent when this goes on? Do both sides of it, and I'll chime in with you as we go through it.
Well, primarily what we need to do whenever we're facing a default situation is step one, is we need to try to remedy that default by amending the contract and getting all the parties to agree. That's step one. That solves about 85 to 90% of the miscommunication problems.
Great takeaway. He's right. 85 to 90%, if they were told that we can fix this problem and it's an easy fix, that it would have fixed it. Listen to those percentages. He's very close. He's right. I think it's actually 87. 87% of them will work if they know the consequences. All right, keep going, Gary. That was a great one.
And in the event that, you have a miscommunication or uncooperative principle, whether you represent the buyer or the seller, they say, well, we're just not going to do that because they drive a red car and we don't trust people who drive red cars. And I'm going, okay, then here is possibly what you face. And this is not legal advice. I advise you to immediately contact your legal counsel about this. But typically what can happen is that you will not only lose your earnest money, but put yourself in a position where you're going to have to hire legal counsel, suffer through litigation, pay legal fees, court costs, a myriad of other things that could happen, and you could still be forced to do it anyway, regardless of whether they drive a red car or not. So we need to really lay out all the pitfalls of a default in front of the client before they get emotional and make an emotional decision.
So look, y'all, we joke with Gary so much just because his knowledge is ridiculous. He actually taught me
He's
a
so much
lot
better
of
than you.
this. Yeah, and Brent of all people should be listening to Gary.
So much better than you.
That's true. His
Watch it.
his demeanor of what he just said, his professional way of doing it, is so clear, and he reminisces everything that we preach in our particular company, where we tell them, we talk a lot about expectations and setting expectations. Gary's going beyond the expectation. He's flat out saying, we need to discuss this, because before this goes any further, you need to know what's going to happen. And this is actually gelling with exactly what I talked about, that if they were told all these things could happen, those cold feet might get pretty warm pretty quick, because whereas they might just lose their earnest money, they're like, so what? But when they're told there are other consequences, and just like he eloquently said, even where you might be forced to do it, they very well might say, this isn't worth it. I'm just going to go through and do it. The problem is there are very few people like Gary out there. There are very few people that would present it in that way. And notice how he put the attorney side in there. And I'll joke with Brent and Mike and pick on them a little bit because they're super smart too. But I know them well. They probably, and I don't mean this as a cut to y'all, I probably would have done the same thing. When they explained that, they would have explained everything he did. They probably wouldn't have gone into the attorney side as much. They probably would have said, hey, look, notice how he said, I'm not giving legal advice. I can tell you that's not, I wouldn't have thought to said that. I would have caught, y'all better, well, mine's more nonchalant. I would have known, y'all better go talk to an attorney before you do this. I do that a lot, but I love how he said, hey, look, I'm not giving you legal advice. That's something I failed to do a lot. Because in all honesty, I'm not giving them legal advice, but I'm telling you better damn well go get it. So notice how his polished effect and the way he sends it, he's sending even a more proper message that he's defending himself, that I'm not telling you what's legal and what's not, what is and what's not, but I am telling you better go look at it, because historically what you're about to do is going to cause a problem. So I love the explanation there. I love how that goes through. Jim.
We usually teach our
what
clients to respond that if there's a threat of a lawsuit, to always respond with, so what? Or what are you going to do about it? I think that's usually the best.
Right. What's
going
to happen in there? Jim, you and I have had some bad ones. Let's try to think of one right now. Off the top of our heads, where it went wrong, and some of the things we have to do. Do you remember any of them? I can think about them if I think long enough, but I don't want to spend too time with dead air. I'm trying to remember.
Well, I think one thing that what Gary said is right on, but there's also the other side to point out, and again, they need to get legal advice, is that other brokerage could sue for their commissions.
So look, y'all, that's why we bring these guys on.
Yeah.
This isn't scripted. We do it live, and that's not even on my list, and it should be. I always forget. That is another piece of this. Not only do we have all these consequences here, we very well could be looking at that we did do what the seller asked us to do. We secured a buyer. If our seller is saying they're backing out, which is rare but can happen, we can go to them and go, if you read that document carefully, you still owe us money. We don't have to close to get our commission. That's another myth too. If we can prove that we said what we're going to do, and they refuse the buyer, or they refuse to close because of some personal objection, that's right. That's another cost that they could be looking at. That's a great response. I always forget that, and it's a good one.
Of course, you were asking about, things that situations you and I were in.
Mike, you'd be thinking about too, because you're on deck. We've done bad ones as well. All right, go ahead.
Of course, the only thing the one that comes to my mind mostly is like when we were when you were the receiver and receivership.
So go ahead, you tell it.
I was handling the short sale, and it was a divorce situation, and in a receivership situation, you as an agent have a lot of power. You can dictate the sale of the house, what's good, and anyway, make a long story short, we had a situation where we agreed on a sales price, but we had a buyer, but one side of the party would not sign. That it happened to be the wife in this situation, and we ended up having to get the judge and pull her into court and to force her to sign. So that's not fun.
Here was an awesome part about that story, because he said it exactly right. But the internal side of it, just so you can follow with the root of this show, she was told, hey, you're under contract. You're being difficult. You could cause a lot of money to be lost. This problem is not just between you and your jerk husband right now. This problem is with an innocent family that's trying to buy this house, and they don't give a damn about your problems right now. But because of your hard-headedness, you're about to cause problems to those innocent people. And that is something that you better be prepared. If you think you're in trouble right now with this nasty divorce that you got going on, wait till you dump that stuff on top of it. And in this particular case, and which is a very unique one, in a receivership, the agent has the power to say, this is what's going to be done. And if the seller doesn't do it, we can actually go to the judge and say, tell them to do it right now. And that actually is what happened in this particular instance. The lady was about to cause such a breach that was going to cause so many problems because she was just being evil about it, that we had to go to the judge. And let me tell you, that judge, he tore into her ass. She mouthed to him. She goes, he's like, one more time. And he goes, and I'm going to give everything to the ex, and you're going to be in contempt. It was so awesome because it's the ultimate. You wish you could tell every client like that. Jim, really, if you think about it, we wish all of them were receiverships, because we wish we could always say, I wouldn't do that if I were you. Because we're telling you right now, this is where you're going. Great example. I knew if I asked you, you would come up with a good one. Mike, do you remember any of the bad ones we've had? You seem to have a bad one every other time, which is a bad one.
Yeah, I bring that up on instruction. But we've had some that the seller just decided they didn't want to sell.
That's right. We had one not too long
ago. I just
ago.
don't want to do it now. I've just decided I don't want to do it.
Yeah, we
It's
had
like,
a seller
what?
with Mike not too long ago. That was 4 weeks into it. And I'll make this a more general conversation to link to his, to bring everybody else that has this issue. We sometimes have sellers who, in this past market, sold their house quick because they were making a ton of money, but their assumption was, I'll be able to find one. And they weren't able to find one. So now they're like, oh, shoot, I wanted to try this, but I'm just backing out. This has been...
No, you're not.
Yeah, that's right. I love Mike too, because he's learned over the years. He talks exactly like I do about that. No, you're not. That's exactly the commentary. Look, notice the way he said that. And this is what you talk about, the difference between a new agent and a professional, experienced one. The hardest part about being the new agent is you just don't know what you can get away with. You don't know how confident to be in what you can and cannot say. Notice he doesn't even flinch with, this isn't a conversation piece. This isn't a, oh, well, this is a, you're going to do it. And then the back end of that is, if you don't, these are the things that are going to happen. And then the real back end of it is exactly what Gary said. I've told you to do it, and you better do it. And if you don't believe me, go talk to an attorney, because they're going to come up with a lot of stuff that I didn't even tell you. And it's going to
knowledge is fear.
Yeah, right, exactly.
You know what's weird is I think people want to be told exactly the truth about what happens, even if it's bad news, even if it's like, look, you've got to do this. You have to be forced to do this. I did that with these people, and they hated me for it. But in the end, they go, you were only looking out for us. And they came back to me 2 years later and used me again to purchase a house back in the DFW area.
See, that's what I'm talking about. That's exactly what I'm talking about. When you know the procedures, and you do it right. And y'all, I remember, funny, Brett and I were talking about this yesterday. I'm stupid on a lot of things, but I remember almost every real estate deal we do. And all I have to hear is the first few sentences. I remember this one with Mike, and these people were, in fact, angry with him. They were pitching a fit going, you can't tell me what to do. And we're like, yes, we can.
But we're not. We're not telling you what to do. We're telling you what can happen.
That's right.
What you do is your choice.
Not yes, we can. Or this is what's going to happen to you. And they did eventually lose their stubbornness. They did talk to the people they need to. And I'll be damned if at the end they were like, that was the absolute right thing to do, because they had a real estate agent who was experienced, who knew what they're doing, and saved them what could have been a terrible situation for them. So yes, we encounter these things all the time. The difference between the new agent and the veteran, or the one that's been the veteran agent, is that they know exactly how to respond to prevent this from happening or continuing. They know what the results are. Y'all, that really is the theme of the entire show today, is that if you set the expectation, there's a damn good chance that you will prevent this horrible stupidity act from happening. Now, I'll tell you the worst part about real estate when it comes to this. It's true too. Buyers have, I want to say it's 31 to 32 outs on the residential 1 to 4. There's about 32 outs. If you read it, there are 32 ways that buyer, for whatever reason, can say, that didn't happen, so I'm backing out. Okay? The scales of equality are terribly tilted towards the buyer in this breach, because they have so many ways they can back out, get out, do whatever. But they also know that even if they legitimately breach without going through one of those outs, they know that the reality of them having to go to court is probably less than 2%. In fact, anybody who's ever had me teach for them before, they know, and I do this quite a bit, the most intelligent buyer in the world that decides to back out for whatever reason and shrugs their shoulders, and they meet face to face with the seller, and the seller's doing the old, I'm going to sue you for everything. I promise you, I'm going to take everything. Y'all, a couple points there. Most people, whether it's real estate or not, that scream and threaten you, they're the last ones that will ever do anything to you. The one that scares you the most is the one where you know something was wrong and they don't say a damn thing. That's the one we're scared about. That's the one that can cause problems. So you have these sellers, and they typically are the ones screaming, I'll sue you for everything. The smartest buyer in the world would get right in their face and go, no, you won't. You say that you will, and you seem really passionate about it, but you and me both know if you do that, we're probably talking a minimum to 6 to 7 months before that gets to court, a minimum of $10,000 to $15,000 for attorneys to prep for it. And guess what? You can't do inside of those 6 months. You cannot sell your house because you have a cloud on it because of this mess that we have right now. And that seller, they're sitting there and they're red in the face and steam's coming out of their ears. And they're like, God, he's right. Because they know for a fact that's exactly what the situation is. That person is right. Even though they are the biggest jerkwad on the face of this planet, they know they're right. And in the end, they're like, God, and they terminate it. They give the person whatever they want, which they completely don't deserve. And they move forward. That is the terrible punchline to this conversation. The reality is that most people can breach if they want to and walk away unscathed. It's probably one of the most unfair things about contract law. Don't get me wrong. In my career, I have had a few people. I don't care if it takes 20 years. I'm waiting till hell freezes for that person to pay for this. I'll get that person every once in a while. But the truth is, most breaches are unfortunate. Y'all, there's not a call that I get that's more stomach turning or disappointing or depressing than an agent telling me that someone's backing out and we know that they can't, and they're basically making our party say, well, we'll have to go get an attorney. There's nothing more disappointing for me to go, y'all, you can go do it, but it's not going to solve anything. You have a seller that's mad. You have a seller that feels like they need to be vindicated. They want justice. They want revenge. And you're talking about a world that won't let them get it. So it's very difficult. It's a hard conversation to have. It's very frustrating because you know that we're right. But the way the legal system is set up, the chances of us going to fruition and being righted in the whole process, less than 2%. And y'all, the theme bigger here is you knowing what the consequences are and that you communicate them properly. Now, I'm going to tell you the other side of this as we start wrapping this up. What ends up happening in a brokerage like ours with people who do know how to handle this, we're usually the one who has to teach the other person what's about to happen. So I get this call at least 5 times a month where one of our agents calls and describes a situation where we're listing. The buyer agent says that the buyer's backing out for no reason at all. And their agent told them that they're only losing earnest money. So I have to pick up the phone and call that agent and go, you do realize that's step 1, right? They're like, what do you mean? I go, you realize that there's monetary damages and maybe even specific performance that you have to do what you said you were going to do. Now, I was like the one who's younger than me, and he goes, oh, you don't know. I'm like, yeah, you're right. I don't. I go, how about you hang up the phone with me, call your broker, and ask them, and then you call me back. So a lot of times they'll call back, and they'll be like, hey, we got a problem. I'm like, I know, right? Yes, I already told them we had a problem. And now they went to someone who was more experienced that works with them and says, you're in a lot of trouble because you didn't know what the consequences are. And you told your buyer that the only consequence was they're going to lose their earnest money. And had you told them that there were these other consequences, chances are we wouldn't be here right now. Are y'all feeling where I'm going with this? This is something that's created by us. One of the most litigious, worst things that can happen a lot of times comes from us being uneducated. You've got to know the consequences. You have to be able to communicate them. And sometimes you have to be able to communicate them for the other agent that doesn't know. A lot of times when I even get the hint that it's coming, and I know the other person doesn't understand, I'll be like, have you told them there's going to be other consequences? Now, this other agent will be smart ass. They'll be like, I have, but they don't understand. I'm like, okay, fair enough that you told them. I think you probably need to stomp your foot a little bit harder and say, look, y'all don't want to do this. Go to the attorney before we do this. And then a lot of times the attorney can talk some sense into him and go, that's going to cost y'all probably $30,000, $40,000 to get out of that contract. So sometimes we need a little bit of extra help. But we have to set the stage that we told them not to do it. They went ahead and did it. Now they're denying it. Now we have to say, you better go to a higher power so you can verify what we're talking about. Because you're going to find out. We're telling you exactly what's going to happen. You're going to pay for that one way or the other. It's a terrible part about real estate.
No, you're talking months of litigation. It actually could go to years.
It can. It can.
Especially right now.
Yeah. And you know, those attorneys, no offense to my attorneys and anybody that watches, I've got a lot of attorney friends. Some of them are horrible. Some of them will drag it out and keep pushing legal fees and all that other stuff in there. It's very possible. So this is not a pleasant conversation. We don't like breach. I'm going to end just so eloquently as Gary started with. The key to this is not only setting the expectation and what can happen. It's also politely going through, y'all, we are not the attorney here, but we are flat out telling you, you better go talk to one because what you're about to step into is a much bigger issue than you realize. I want to make one quick comment before we split today. This does not apply to a finance denial where someone is not able to close on the house the day before because they've been rejected for finance. Buyers, sellers always want to see that particular person. That's what we call the old phenomenon of kicking somebody when they're down. We just don't allow it. It's one of those things that sucks. If a buyer loses their job before the day of close and they can't close on the property now because they've been denied credit, that person just found out that they're not credit worthy to purchase something that they want to live in day by day. You think you're having a bad day? You should be in their shoes. Okay, so we have to look at both sides. We have to look what's going to happen here, and we have to make sure that we've done the right thing and we've served everybody the best we can. Because without those expectations being set, we are going to be facing bigger problems out there, and it could financially hurt us more than anything. All right, you're going to find the information you had in this one is not something you read out of a book. And you're actually going to find it's not something that your broker pulls you aside and talks to you about. These are things that are day to day for us that we want our agents to know, and we push that they know so that they're better and smarter than the average one out there. I want to thank y'all for watching. As always, y'all really should push the shit other people, especially this episode. People who struggle on not knowing damages. I've actually had people who are dealing with another real estate agent who's having a problem that says, well, listen to this guy. And it actually has solved a problem before. So pass it on to those that you think need it. Managers, team leads, whoever you're managing, brokeraging, whatever. This is good for you to pass on to your team, because this is, you and I both know, this is not some of the things that you teach on a daily basis. So you're welcome for us covering that part that you don't do. Y'all have a great week. We'll see you on another one. Y'all have a good one. We'll talk to y'all soon. Keep pushing. We'll be at Halloween before you know it, and the holidays right after that. So year's almost over. Talk to y'all soon.